Welcome Tefo M Setlhare. Thanks for joining me on lunchtime coaching today. And Tefo, Tefo is a leader. I'm going to speak more about who you are and what you do. You're a leader who challenges legacy thinking and status quo with the experience of working and being a board director in the insurance, pension fund, non-bank, financial, mining and metals industry. You also have a legal background and completed your global executive development program and professional business coaching program at the Gordon Institute of a Business of Science. And you're a speaker with a focus on transformational leadership. Tefo, welcome and thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you for the invite. And every time I hear anyone reading that out, I always struggle to identify with that person that you're talking about. But thank you very much for the great introduction.
Yeah, you know, I think it's funny that when we do stuff, we just do it and we instinctively go and create and make things happen. And by the time you look back and think, wow, okay, cool, I did all that. It's sometimes a good reflection moment.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So Tefo, tell us more about you, what you do, and give the listeners some idea of who you are and what you do today.
Yeah. So, well, you've pretty much captured the essence of who I am, what I do. But I always want to bring a bit of the human side of who I am. And I grew up in a little mining town called Slibepikwe, close to the central part of Botswana. And I have one older brother. I was brought up by a single parent. Presently, I'm married with 2 kids, a boy and a girl. And that's who I am, I guess, as a human being. And in terms of professionally, listen, Kevin, I always say to people, I struggle to articulate what it is that I do anymore. I seem to do everything that no one else wants to do. But if you were to say, like, I should put myself in a box, background, legal, gone through risk management, insurance, and now I'm at a point where I'm doing enterprise development and entrepreneurship development. And how I like to simply put that is to say our economy in Botswana is in desperate need of billionaire companies and billionaire entrepreneurs to diversify the economy. So I'm one of the people who's trying to build critical mass to ensuring that happens at a company level and definitely at a country level. So that presently, this is what my focus is on.
That's amazing. One of the things you shared information with me on is generally wanting to discuss the importance of transformational leadership through storytelling and to inspire, impact, and influence people. Tell us more about your story before we get to the crux of the storytelling, but tell us more about your story and why storytelling.
Yeah, so listen, as I was saying, I was brought up by a single parent, by my mother. Yeah. And for a lot of my life, I've had to create my own blueprint of certain things in my life. First of all, you know, there are certain conversations that my mother couldn't have with me, obviously male-related conversations. And then without there being a father figure, only at a later stage in my life, that's when I had a father figure who I held very dearly to my heart. And unfortunately, he passed on. But he had taught me some valuable lessons, and I guess the greatest lesson that I learned from him is really that you need to be the best version of yourself. And what I didn't have was the blueprint for being the best version of yourself. And I grew up primary school, secondary school. I just went through it, Kevin. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know, like any other guy in primary school, I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to be a soldier. Then secondary school, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be so many other things. And I just didn't have a blueprint. I didn't know. And to the point that I got to university, I remember I applied for medicine. And after about 2 times, the admissions department told me they had lost my application forms. And then they said they could offer me economics. And I had absolutely no interest in economics. And then I said, yeah, okay, fine, let's give it a try. And then they lost my forms again. And then they said, we can offer you law. And up until that time, in all honesty, I think I only knew one lawyer. This was in my hometown. I only knew one lawyer and I didn't really understand what it was about. And I said, sure, let's do this. And this is just to show you that I really didn't have a blueprint for life, and I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have someone to guide me. And over time, even same thing in my career, you know, I've really had to work very, very hard. And I realized that if there was me, there should be so many other people like me who lack the guidance and the mentorship and perhaps the coaching. And that, you know, sometimes we complicate these principles like leadership. So this is how I came up with storytelling, to say, in the same way that I had to discover my own blueprint, I was just going to tell my story about where I came from, my upbringing, and how my career has panned out and changed, and where and who I am now. And that in telling my story, if just one person is able to find themselves in my story, and they're able to take away something from my story and relate with it, and get some guidance or some mentorship or coaching out of it, then perhaps that's what leadership should be about. Because I've also struggled, you know, it's just one of these principles, you know, where people distinguish leadership to management, but you never really understand what it is. So I sort of try to simplify it for myself, to say, I want to be to others who I would have wanted someone to be to me. And I'm going to do this through storytelling. I'll just tell my story, stand in front of people, tell my story. Hopefully I'll always get one person in the audience who's able to find themselves in my story, and I'm able to inspire them, impact them, and influence them.
That's amazing. I resonate to everything you're saying. I think a lot of the time when you do have a parent figure as part of your household, we generally take that for granted and go, okay, well, I always had a mother and I always had a father. But very often people, you know, go through circumstances and life where they don't have the know-how and the blueprint, as you refer to it, is on how to be in the world as a man or a woman, for that matter. But I think, you know, part of the information that you shared with me is the blueprint and what that story is. And one of the things you touch on is everyone is born with a purpose. A purpose is a just cause. So, you know, from having that kind of experience, how has that led to you having this just cause? Because I know we're going to get to an exciting tool that you're going to share with us just now, but give us more insight on what that is and what that blueprint, the story, the just cause is for you.
Yeah. So because for the longest time, I didn't have someone to look up to guide me. I realized that, you know, perhaps loyalty to one individual and to an organization or to someone else's principles is perhaps the most dangerous thing, because this is how you lose yourself. And if I allowed other people to become my beacon in life, I'd find myself being several other people but not myself. So I had to dig in deep into myself and say, what makes me up? Who am I? What's my North Star? And my North Star is what will carry me through this entire life. And yes, I can use certain people as reference points, such as mentors and coaches. But at the end of the day, for me to not lose myself into other people's ideologies, I needed to have my North Star, and I needed to get to a point of understanding what is success for me, what is life for me, why do I think I was put on this earth for? And I believed if I got to that level of depth in terms of understanding myself, then I'm able to be in any situation and still come out possibly as the better or the best version of myself. And that's how I came up with this conversation around just cause, because obviously not having a lot of reference points, I had to figure out a lot of things myself, a lot of mistakes, some bad, some very bad. But I think the few successes, or the greatest success that I think I got out of my search, was understanding what my just cause was, understanding what my purpose was, and simply saying, listen, my purpose is really to be the best version of myself in any environment, and being able to articulate to myself what that best version of myself was. What did it look like? What did it taste like? To the extent that if I'm sitting across the table from someone mentoring me, they are able to give me their experiences, but their experiences don't in turn become my experiences, and I'm able to allow myself to be impacted and influenced and inspired to the extent that it has to happen. Because sometimes I think if you're not very clear on who you are, on what your purpose is, you get a lot of identity crisis every time you meet certain people who might have greater experience than you, or who can inspire or influence you more. And then you find that you're all over the place, and 5 years later you still feel you're asking yourself the same question: who am I? And yet you have 4 or 5 different coaches or mentors. So for me, that's why the Just Cause our conversation was very important. I had to identify who I really was and be able to use that as my compass.
I love that you say North Star, because so very often I think we often get stuck in the busyness of busyness, because when I'm busy with work and I'm busy with life, and part of the story I keep telling myself is I'm really busy, but very often we don't get to focus on that North Star. And I used the analogy the other day with a client, and I said, if we're thinking of direction, but very often looking in the past, it's like driving down the highway and looking in your rearview mirror. You're going, but you're gonna probably pick up some issues on your way. So I love the North Star analogy that you use, and essentially I also find, and it's one of the questions that I have for you, do you not find that people are sometimes just they become a bit complacent and a bit lazy? I know Lisa Nichols, I don't know if you know international speaker Lisa Nichols, she refers to, she has a slogan, and she says, don't make me the hero because you're too lazy to become one.
Yeah.
The day I heard that, I kind of, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm going, well, who needs to be the hero? And from listening to what you're talking and the story that you're sharing, it's you're the hero. You're the hero of the story. And I think it's one of the reasons why I do this is, because a lot of people have stories like this. And it's a beautiful way of hearing how people do what they do, but also becoming that hero of their story. But the question I want to pose, because I'll just keep talking if I don't. So do you find that that's often the case, that people just need someone who's actually who's stepping up and showing up for someone?
I think so, Kevin. One of the things that I really believe is that, especially our generation, we have a moral and generational responsibility to be mentors and coaches to the generations and the guys coming behind us. And I think because the times are very challenging now, and we need, there's so many bad things that are happening around the world. There's a lot of bad news. You read the newspapers, you look at the news on TV. It's really a lot of bad news, and you sort of want that feeling back of a Superman, or Catwoman, or whatever superhero. We need to go back to those days where people first of all proclaimed themselves as superheroes, but importantly, making everyone feel that they can be a superhero as well. If you think about it, a guy like Superman being a superhero it's not so much about him, it's about everyone else. It's about making the world safe enough for everyone to be a better version of themselves. So it's not so much that he wants to be turned into a statue, or he wants to be put on the highest building. And it's the same analogy that we don't like to proclaim ourselves as heroes. And you rightfully say, I am the hero. I am the main actor of my story. And half of the time I get people, whether it's on LinkedIn or wherever, and they say to me that, oh gosh, you've done really, really well. And there's some, and I'm not quite sure what the word is, but there's this humility that we have, especially in my culture, of not wanting to admit that you've actually made it, that you've actually been successful. And I think it's a good thing, because if you're able to acknowledge it to yourself that, listen, I've actually made it, despite the challenges, circumstances I went through, I've actually made it. And with doing that, some people are able to pick that up from you. But if you are a bit complacent in your, I don't really think I've made it, I don't think I'm a big deal. But obviously, listen, there's a difference between that self-belief and arrogance and all these other things, which I won't go into. But I think the point you're making, which is right, is that we need to acknowledge that we are the superheroes of our stories, and that in doing that, we're able to tell our stories and help other people who might be going through a different era of their life where the self-belief is not as high. And you're basically saying, look at me. If I came from being raised by a single parent from a small mining town to where at some point I was chairing an investment committee that had about $1 billion and assets under management, like anyone can do that, you know. I mean, if you look at the if you look at the, whether you want to call it the odds, or you look at things that make sense, you're like, does it make sense? Yeah, it makes sense, because everyone has got that potential in them. And for me, this is where it goes to just cause, that it's really about your potential. Everyone is born with this potential, and most times it has less to do with a lot of these other things that we think it has to. It has to do with ourselves and believing. And if I can be a superhero for 2, 3 guys, boys or women or girls, I'm more than happy to be that. Any day, I'll take it.
And so it's lovely. I love the information you share. But as you're speaking, I'm listening. I'm reading some of the stuff that you sent me, and one of the references you have here is history is not for reference and not residence. Tell us more why you make that statement.
Yeah, and I shared this on LinkedIn the other day, and it actually got an overwhelming response. And you actually made the same analogy a couple of minutes ago about when you're driving on a highway, you know, you're looking at your rear view mirror, you don't see where you're going because you're stuck on where you're coming from. And for me, talk about where I came from. And you know, sometimes people confuse the fact that when you start talking about your humble beginnings, it almost sounds like you're making an excuse or becoming a victim. But the point for me is that's not the narrative. So when I talk about my humble beginnings, my storyline is, listen, this is where I came from, and if I could get from there to here, anyone else came. But if I make this a bit personal to you, Kevin, I had a trip a couple of years ago to Poland, where I got to really understand a lot more about Poland than I had understood. And I was in the city of Warsaw, and the Polish guy who was talking to us in this meeting explained to us that at some point Warsaw had been totally flattened during the war, and how it was rebuilt was through people donating photographs of how the city used to look like, and the architects started to make redrawings based on those photos, and now that's how the city was rebuilt. And the point of it is that city could have chosen to be a victim and stay and say and accept its fate, its status quo, and remain forever demolished. But they decided that, listen, history is a place of reference. It will always be a place of reference for us, but it shouldn't be our residence. It shouldn't be where we stay, because if we stay in that place, we will never get to where we'll get to. And if you look at the global financial crisis, if I stand corrected, but I think Poland was one of the countries that actually did quite well and survived the GFC. And for me, I've always held this story quite dearly, more so that it resonates with my own personal story. And I always try to bring this to all the conversations I have when I talk to the young people in Botswana, that, listen, all of us have a story to tell. All of us come from some place. Whilst that is foundational, it impacts us, our DNA, everything about us, but it certainly shouldn't and definitely doesn't define us.
It's amazing. I love it. So, you know, part of lunchtime coaching is always a requirement to leave the audience with something that's useful, a tip, a technique that they really can take away. And I know you've got something fantastic to share with us. So it's called the BeVos in a mess.
Yes.
And it's I've never heard of this before, but I'm loving it. So tell us, explain to us how we use, and what is the BeVos in a mess, and how do we use it?
Okay, so first of all, BeVos stands for best version of self. And it's a simple, Kevin, I just try to keep things very, very simple so that people can understand them, so that people can use them. And I used to realize that, and there's everything in that concept of BeVos in a mess. There's a bit of neuroscience in there. There's a bit of management, leadership. There's everything, but the essence of it is, it goes back to purpose. if you've articulated, perhaps maybe like I have, that my purpose is to be the best version of myself, that I'm born with that innate potential to be the best version of myself, so is everyone else. So in instances of madness and craziness and uncertainty, how do I ensure that I continue to be the best version of myself? And obviously the neuroscience in there is that in moments of uncertainty, you know, the brain does all sorts of stuff. It's either going to fight or flight. And it's easy in that moment to lose yourself, either to anger or to run away from a situation that you otherwise would have controlled. So I started to articulate this to myself to say, so if I bring in the neuroscience and then I bring in the lessons I've learned around the world, the history is a place of reference and not residence. Another life lesson I learned when I was in Germany about failing fast and failing forward. And the essence of it, I said, if you're in a very difficult situation, it's an opportunity for you to reset. And that reset, I call it the stop, breathe, go. That in any moment of pressure, high pressure, whatever it is, or uncertainty, or when you're just about to make a very, very difficult decision, you need to pause. You need to stop and you need to breathe before you go, because that next decision, that next move is gonna be the game changer. So BeVos in a mess means exactly that. It's any opportunity in your life where you're able to stop, breathe, go, because you're about to make a difficult decision. You're about to make a big decision. You're about to change something. And the essence, you need to think several things in that moment. You need to think of what the best version of yourself looks like. You need to have a conversation around your purpose. And the beauty about this, Kevin, is when you've done this several times, it literally takes a couple of seconds to do. I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of stuff. You need to have a conversation with yourself about, who am I? Where have I come from? Is this moment defining me? Should it define me? Does my history define me? You have to also acknowledge that if it's a big decision, you might have to say, I need to make this decision now. I mean, let me rather fail fast and fail forward rather than be stuck in a jam. You need to think about how your brain functions to say, this is a moment of uncertainty, and my brain could either act one way or the other. And once you've gotten to grips with this very simple concept of being a BeVos in a mess, and you speak it to yourself in a difficult situation, and you say, I'm going to be the BeVos in this mess, then you're able to then start having other smaller conversations that I've just articulated. But in essence, that's it, Kevin. I've really tried to simplify. It's nothing new. I just think it's catchy. Because it's catchy, it will be easy to remember. BeVos in a mess. I remember one time I was talking to some young guys, and I said, imagine BeVos in a mess. You're a superhero, and you've got a red button in the palm of your hand. And in that moment where you're in a mess, in the middle of an argument, in the middle of a big deal, and you're under pressure, imagine pressing that red button and just pausing, stopping everything, creating clarity in your head. In essence, that's what it is.
I mean, I love it. I think it's a fantastic analogy, and it's definitely something I'm gonna share, and I'll make sure that you are credited if I do ever share it. But it's a fantastic analogy. Fail fast and fail forward. I just want to touch on that as well. You know, I think a lot of the time, instinctively, I think people get to a point where they look at failure as such a debilitation. It becomes such a usual way of like, I'm stuck, I can't go forward. Or part of the fear of the failure really keeps people from doing anything, or really, you know, pushing that button for themselves and becoming the hero. But don't you want to just touch on that as well, from fail fast and fail forward? Because that analogy in itself is like exactly the point, you know, because we're going to make mistakes, but how we get up and go from here is really important.
Yeah, true. I don't know about other parts of the world, or even way in South Africa, Kevin, but I think in Botswana and I think the education system exacerbates this a bit, and possibly our culture. It almost builds people up to be afraid of making mistakes, and building people to be very, very cautious, and to be risk averse. And you see it playing throughout. You see it play throughout where people are. I'll give you an example. I'm also seeing a lot of it in this new area of entrepreneurship and enterprises, that there's a great level of risk aversion. The risk appetite is quite low because people are afraid to make mistakes. And there's this, we just lack this moment of realizing that it's actually in these moments of discomfort, in these moments of failure, that's when you actually grow. That's when you actually learn from your lessons. And one of the things I like to talk to young people about, and I always say, if you have a business idea and you're 100% sure about that business idea, then you are late. Because what we tend to do is we tend to get stuck in the analysis paralysis of starting a business. We want to do research, we want to do everything. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but we'll spend 2-3 years doing the research, which is why my most favorite saying is start now. Start now. You don't have to start when this business idea is 100%. If it is 100%, then someone else, a couple of people have already done it and they're doing it so much better than you. So you need to start now, and you need to make mistakes. You need to make mistakes, and then these mistakes just catapult you forward, because you make one mistake, you learn quickly, you move forward. You make another one, you move quickly. And if you think about it, even design thinking is actually formulated around exactly this: failing fast and fail forward. Ideating, creating prototypes, and then testing the prototypes, and then you keep on improving it. So it's just as I said, when you talk some of these big words, sometimes people struggle a bit to understand them. But when you say to people, fail fast and fail forward, it almost presupposes that it is okay to fail. And if you think about it, when you do fail, you're actually failing forward, because if you do the same thing again, you're going to do it better. So we need to realize that it's almost like tripping. You're tripping over, but forward. You hardly trip backwards. You hardly trip to the sides. You always forward. And then when you trip forward and you realize that you've actually moved, just by falling, you've moved 2 meters ahead of where you are. So that's, for me, the simplest analogy, that we need to embrace, that making mistakes is good. Failure is even better. I mean, Kevin, when I talk to people about business deals or entrepreneurs or enterprises, the question I always ask is, tell me about your failures. Because the failures are really, really where I think you find the growth and you find the success.
Yeah. Tefo, we could carry on for hours and hours, but because it's quick lunchtime offering that we have for people. In conclusion, what do you want to leave with everybody today if they take away a wonderful learning from the BeVos in a mess method?
Yeah. So, and I'm going to steal a bit of your words there, Kevin. Everyone is a hero in their own story. Everyone has a story to tell. But most importantly, there's always someone out there to listen to that story. So my hope for everyone, for every leader, for everyone who believes they're a leader, is to tell their story. Because there's always someone out there who's willing to listen to that story, who will listen to that story, who will be impacted, influenced, and inspired by that story. And most importantly, I believe that our primary purpose in life is to be the best version of ourselves. And taking care of each other comes secondary to that. We can only do the best things in life when we are the best versions of ourselves. And I guess the last word is that seek to be the best version of yourself, especially when in a mess. Because it's only that when you really realize the true best version of yourself.
Fantastic. Tefo, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for chatting to us at Lunchtime Coaching. This will be up every lunchtime. We're going to be having all of these lunchtime moments. That's what's called Lunchtime Coaching. We also have lunchtime business happening every Friday, and also some personal insights that I share, and lunchtime marketing on Thursdays. So if you want to check out those are also going to be happening every Thursday and Friday. But Tefo, thank you so much. And I'm going to leave you with, Tefo, this quote that you shared with us from Viktor E. Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Tefo, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin.
And oh yeah, so before we go, I almost forget. Where do people get hold of you? I will put all the information down in the description box, but just tell us where we can get hold of you.
Great. If you check Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. You look for Tefo M Setlhare, you'll find me there.
Fantastic. Tefo M Setlhare, I'll put all that information in the box. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing the wisdom. And I'll chat to you soon.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Keep well.
No problem. Thanks so much. Cheers.
Thanks. Yes.